Hi everyone, my name's Sarah and this is my channel, So Sarah Sewed. Today I'm going to be sharing with you a whole lot of my recent makes. I haven't shared a makes video for quite some time, so there are a few things to share with you, some sewed items and some knitted items, so I hope you'll join me. Before I get started, I'll just tell you what I'm wearing today. I am wearing the Sunday sweater by Petite knit. This is such a cozy, warm pattern. It came up quite quickly. It's knit on quite large needles, and I knit it when I had about a year's knitting experience. So it is something that's very achievable for a beginner. I'll stand up and show you. So I've got it tucked into my jeans. If I don't have it tucked in, it's quite a boxy kind of look. And it's got these beautiful balloon sleeves. I'll put a picture of a full length shot as well so you can see the whole effect. All right, on to my makes. I was really inspired by the Sew Frugal 23 challenge, which I'm sure a lot of you heard of, where we were challenged to find a free pattern and sew it using material from our stash. So I had a whole lot of things lined up for that. I only actually managed to make one thing in March, but I did continue and make a few more things in April and May as well. So I'll start with those. The item I did get sewn up for Sew Frugal 23 was a t-shirt that I wear as pajamas. I used the free t-shirt pattern by Closet Core Patterns. It is called the Core Tee. The Core Tee has a couple of different views and options. It's got short sleeves or long sleeves. It comes with a cropped length or a longer length, and there's the option of adding a pocket and also the option of neatening the inside back neckband with an extra bit of material. Now, I went with the most simple options possible because this is just pajamas and I really didn't need anything fancy at all. I had this material in my stash. It was from Spotlight a couple of years ago. It's some kind of drapey jersey. I'm not sure what it is. It's either a rayon jersey or it could be a bamboo jersey. I don't actually know. But I went with the long length option and I sewed a size 12 for this one. My measurements put me between around a size 10 to 12 and I decided to go with a size 12 for this one. Being pajamas, I really didn't mind a kind of oversized feel for this one. This is a great pattern. It's hard to see what it looks like from me just holding it up, so I'll put some pictures in. But yeah, this one came together really, really nicely. As I said, I left off all of the optional extras like the button and that extra neckband, but the instructions were excellent, and just like every other Closet Core pattern I've ever followed, they were very, very clear and thorough. So an excellent free pattern. I found in this version, in this quite drapey fabric, the neckline sits in a very comfortable place for me. I find it really comfortable. I did go on and make a second Core Tee recently, and this time it was in a much more stable fabric, and I'll show you. This one I made in a fabric that I was lucky enough to purchase from a warehouse sale by Variety Hour, which is a small little brand that do beautiful fabrics on small runs of Melbourne-made clothing. They had a warehouse sale, I think it was at the end of March or early April, where they were selling fabrics and I'm not sure what else because actually I couldn't go. But someone that I'm friends with on Instagram was there and she posted that she was there, and I sent a message saying I wish I'd been able to go. It was during my school musical. I had to get to the theatre and I was not able to be there. And she very kindly replied and said she was happy to send me photos of the fabrics there and that she would buy what I wanted and I would just pay her back and then she'd send them to me. So that's what we did. It was very, very kind of her. So this was one of the fabrics that I chose. It was it wasn't labeled as what the fabric was, but on Instagram, when I posted this t-shirt, Variety Hour made some sort of comment about it being one of they were trialing an active, some kind of active line of materials because one of the people that works at Variety Hour went on Australian Survivor. And so they sent her off with a whole lot of Variety Hour clothes. So I believe this fabric was trialed for that. So I don't know, it's quite a stable fabric. It feels to me like cotton elastane. Anyway, so I made the t-shirt again. It was quite a strange offcut. It wasn't very straight. Some of the edges were, one end was more narrow than the other. So it wasn't the easiest piece of fabric to cut a pattern out of. So for this one, I had to go for the cropped version of the t-shirt. And I also went down a size because my pajamas t-shirt was quite oversized. However, in this more stable fabric, I think I'd prefer staying with that size 12. Also for me, I feel like this crop version is just slightly too short. I'd prefer it maybe an inch or so longer, but it really was all I could get out of this fabric. I really love it though. It's a great fabric and I'm looking forward to wearing this. I think it'll go really well with high-waisted pants, and I can probably also layer it. I talked about the neckband before, how I found it really good on my other version. This one I find just that little bit too high. It's comfortable, but I have a preference for a slightly lower neckline on my t-shirts. So I think if I was to make it again in a stiffer fabric, I would lower the neckline just a little bit, but in a drapey fabric, I found it perfect. So again, with this version, I didn't include a front pocket. I left the neck band just plain. Now, I don't have an overlocker, so everything I've done is just using zigzag stitches. You can see the inside. There's nothing very neat about it, but you can't tell. I think the outside looks perfectly fine. And well, it's good enough for me, and I'm very happy to wear something that looks like that. So they are my 2 core tees by Closet Core Patterns. I also wanted to make some pajama shorts as part of Sew Frugal, and I did start them, but I didn't finish them until April. Now for these, I used the pattern, it's a free pajama shorts pattern by Life Sew Savory, and this is a sort of a blogging website, so you could download the pattern pieces, but the instructions are all just, you have to read them off the website. It was really simple and quick to make up. I haven't taken any photos of myself wearing these because they are really short, but they're just a simple pajama short, just a really simple short. This is, I think this is a rayon jersey from Spotlight I had left over from making my niece a little dress based on the Wiggles, the purple wiggle. Yeah, it came together really, really easily. My most recent YouTube video was sharing a week of me sewing and knitting and that kind of thing while I was on holidays, and I was making these. I forgot to take the elastic while I was away, so I came home and I put it in, but I'm not sure what I was thinking. I found a piece of elastic that was the right width for the waistband, and I put it in and I sewed it up, and I sewed down the side seams to keep it in place, and then I tried it on and they're way too tight. I forgot to check before I closed up those seams. So I will be unpicking them at some point. I tried wearing them a couple of times, but they're just not comfortable. You want to be comfortable, especially in bed. So I need to unpick them and find a longer piece of elastic to put in. And I'm sure I'll get a whole lot of wear out of those once they are comfortable to wear. So they are the Life Sew Savory free pajama shorts pattern. When I was sharing my plans for March, I mentioned that I wanted to make a long black woolen cardigan, and I couldn't remember the name of the pattern. And a whole lot of you kindly let me know in the comments that you thought I was thinking of the Sinclair Patterns Harper Cardigan. And that's absolutely what I was thinking of. So thank you very much. And I've downloaded that pattern and I have made a Harper cardigan. The Harper Cardigan by Sinclair Patterns is quite incredible as a free resource. I was really surprised. I haven't used any of Sinclair Patterns before, but for a free pattern, this one had so many options. First of all, there were 3 different files that you could choose from depending on your height. So I'm 160 centimeters tall, and there was a whole A0 pattern for people in the petite height of up to 160 centimeters. So I chose that. There was also, I think it was called regular and tall. And then the patterns themselves are layered, so it's really easy to print your own size. And then there are 4 different lengths for the cardigan. There is a cropped one, maybe a hip length one, maybe mid-thigh, and then a duster length, which is below the knee. And that's what I decided to make. There are also several options for the sleeves. Definitely 3/4 and full length. There might have even been another option, but I will put the line drawings in so you can see. But I went with the long sleeve duster length cardigan. It's not the sort of cardigan that is intended to be, you know, done up. There are no buttons or anything like that. It's just a very drapey layer. But that's exactly what I was after. It's something that I want to be able to throw on over maybe pants and a top at work. I'm a music teacher and I conduct a lot, and it's the sort of thing that I think would look good from an audience perspective. Very drapey, kind of just long black cardigan. It's also just a really nice thin but warm extra layer to be able to put on. So I'm really, really happy with how this came together. I bought this wool a couple of years ago intending to make a long cardigan, but I just didn't get around to it until recently. I owned a similar black cardigan, but it was just completely eaten by moths, and it got to a point where it didn't look good, especially to wear to work. So it's something I've been thinking about for a long time, and I finally got it done. Now the wool, it's a lovely, I believe it's 100% wool, and a really nice quality, but I tell you what, I didn't enjoy sewing with it at all, mainly because of how much it curled on the edges as I was trying to sew it. It was really hard. This pattern had 1/4 inch seam allowances, and to keep those edges flat while I was trying to sew was really difficult. And I just wanted to get it done. So that's something to be aware of. I made the mistake when I was sewing one of the front pieces to the back. I didn't check carefully as to which one was the center and which one was the side, and I accidentally sewed it on the wrong way. But before I'd noticed, I had zigzag stitched the seam together, and I had top stitched it down. And this is the sort of fabric that does not like to be unpicked. So I had to unpick a whole row, and this is on both shoulders, a whole row of top stitching, a whole row of zigzagged seams sewn together, and then a whole row of the actual stitches of the pieces sewn together. And I did end up with a couple of holes, which I had to try and cover. You can sort of just see at the top there. There's a little bit of an opening. I just noticed it actually while I was making this video, so I might have to do some kind of little fix there, because you can see the stay tape just poking through. So yes, I was trying to be really thorough and do all the things the pattern told me to do to make it a really clean and neat finish. But because I hadn't checked properly, it ended up being the most frustrating part of the whole project. Anyway, I wore it this week and I'm really, really happy with it. And yeah, the whole thing was easy to make and well explained in the pattern. So that's all the items I've finished sewing in the last couple of months. I have been spending a lot of time knitting and also working on a quilt. So I'll share some of my works in progress, but I did finish a couple of knitting projects as well. And I'll start with the one that was a success. So this is the Musselburgh or the Musselburgh hat by Ysolde, Teague. And it's a really, really popular pattern on Ravelry and on Instagram. The interesting thing about this pattern is that it's actually knit as one great big long tube. So you tuck one end into the other. Okay, and so there you can have like a slouchy beanie, or you can turn up the rim, the brim, the brim or the rim, and have a beanie like that. If you used a whole lot of different types of wool or different colors, you'd end up with, potentially four different looking beanies, because the colors would all be different places. I just used the one ball of yarn, the one skein, which was a present that I got from one of my sisters at the end of 2021. And it's a wool, it's just a fingering weight. I think it's a merino nylon blend from memory. And it's from a local yarn dyer to me called, her name's Liz, and she's from Yarns by the Bay. So it's a beautiful feeling beanie. I've always found in the past that when I go to buy a hat, like a sun hat, my head is very big and it's hard to find hats that fit. And when I took my measurements for this beanie, I believed I fit into the adult large size. So that's what I knit. But I feel like it's a bit too big. I would prefer like a more snug kind of feeling, especially around my ears. I don't want it to just feel like it's sitting on my head. I want it to sort of feel like my head is being sort of hugged by my beanie. So if I was to make this one again, I would make the size down, but I would probably still make it the large length, because I like to have kind of a significant sized rim around the bottom. It took quite a while to knit this up because, you know, it's a lot of stitches. The hard part was starting. You start with just a few stitches, and on you can use whatever method works for you, but I tried a couple of different ones, and I was on double pointed needles, and having just 2 stitches on needles was really fiddly. And you are increasing on every round, but I just found it a really, really fiddly start. And actually the cast on took me about 2.5 hours. So once I had it down though, and once I knew, you know, once I had I just find DPNs when there's not very many needles on there, it's just hard to figure out which way they all go. They all sort of cross over each other and it's fiddly. But then it was all fine. And then it was great when I got to then transfer it onto just a circular needle. Very comfortable. And then I finished again at double pointed needles down the other end. But yeah, it was a fun project. And if I did make it again, I would also definitely do a variety of different wool just to make it more interesting to knit, and also more interesting final product and a few different variations to wear. This one is available in lots of different sizes, from newborn all the way up to adult extra large from memory. Yeah, and it's quite open-ended in terms of the size of needles and the yarn that you decide to use as well. So the Musselburgh or Musselburgh hat. So now we come to my really disappointing knitted finish. This was something I was looking forward to making for ages. I bought a kit from a seller called Kit Couture, which I believe is in Denmark. I get it wrong every time, so I'll put the place on the screen if it's not Denmark. And I love the style of everything that they sell. It's all very colourful, and there's a lot of interesting features that you don't see on other designs. So the one I chose was a short-sleeved sweater that had beading all over it. And I'll put in a picture of how it looks in the design. Now, I love the colours of this. I found the instructions quite difficult to follow, to be honest. So they're written as pictures, the whole thing. Very different to any other pattern I've tried to read before, with the idea behind it being that these should be simpler to read and something that anyone can understand, but I actually found it quite confusing. Unfortunately, I didn't do a gauge swatch for this pattern because I guess I just couldn't be bothered, and everything else I've ever knit has been okay. But I hadn't used this pattern designer before, so I probably should have taken the time to make one, because this ended up being a disaster. The whole thing is just way too small and unwearable. When I finished knitting it, the number of rows I was supposed to, it was so short. I had to add a whole lot of extra length. And then when I put the shoulder ruffles on, which in the picture sort of are here, mine really at the top of the shoulder, and I looked silly, I felt silly, but mainly just really disappointed at how much time I'd spent, and it wasn't cheap either. So here we have it. This has been just sort of sitting in the basket for the last couple of months since I made it. It's so heavy as well. So it was really uncomfortable to knit and actually not very enjoyable. The beads were a bit of a nightmare to knit on. Yeah, but the whole thing's so heavy. Like, anyway, I'll pin in a picture of me wearing it, but I can imagine it could look kind of cute on maybe like a 6-year-old, because that's literally the size it is. But when I lay it flat and measured it, what the finished measurements should have been, it looked like mine was something like 20 centimeters narrower than the finished measurements in the pattern. So obviously I knit with a much tighter gauge than the pattern designer, but I've never had that issue before. So something to be aware of if you ever knit a kit couture pattern, do a gauge swatch and check. Yeah, the first sign that things were a bit strange to me was when I had to start the beads. Now, you can see on mine, they sort of start here. Now, I decided to wait because in the pattern, I was supposed to start them right up here. It was just shortly after finishing the neckband, and I thought, well, that's not what it looks like in the picture. So I waited a bit longer, but still, I feel like they ended up too high, and they should have just been over the bust line. Yeah, so the whole thing is just out of proportion, really. I do have a little bit of the wool left. I think I've got a skein of the variegated mohair that is held throughout. So I don't know, it might be nice to make a beanie or something with the leftover wool, just so it hasn't been a complete waste. If you live in Melbourne near me and you want it, you can have it. Just let me know. It's just wasting space here. If you've got someone in your house or in your family who might like to wear it, they can have it. Or if you think you'd be able to refashion it, you can have it. I'm serious. You just have to come and get it. All right? So that took a long time and yeah, very disappointing. I do have a couple of works in progress at the moment. I'll quickly share with you. I know this video is going quite long, so I won't spend too long talking about it, but I've started another knitting project. I've gone back to Petite knit. I have made several Petite knit patterns, including the one I'm wearing. So I know I can understand their patterns. I know that the fit, my gauge is pretty fine for their patterns. So I am making the Cumulus blouse by Petite knit. It is knit with 2 strands of mohair on 4.5mm needles, so it's knitting up quite fast. It's a V-neck style with long sleeves, basically. And I'm using a variegated mohair from Louis and Lola Yarns, which is a small business in Tasmania, and I got that yarn for my birthday. I'll show you how I'm going. So you can see I am just working on getting the bodice to the right length. It needs to be about 1/2 meter from here to where I cast off. So I haven't measured it, but I can tell just from looking at it, there's still, I don't know, maybe 15 centimeters to go, something like that. I'll measure it soon. And then I'll have to do the sleeves, but I'm really enjoying that. I'm working on that a lot. And my other work in progress at the moment is a new quilt. And if you watched my recent video while I was away, I was cutting out all the pieces for the Charade quilt by Jittery Wings. And I have now pieced together all of those pieces that I cut out into their small blocks. So I needed to make 120 blocks that used 7 of the small cutout pieces. I'll show you. So here's an example of one of my blocks. I need to square them up. They're not quite even, but I've got 120 of these, and I've got them all sort of pinned together in in the order I'm going to sew them together. So I'm not sure when I'll get back into doing that. I am quite focused at the moment on a bit of sewing for an upcoming holiday, and I will make a video about that very shortly and let you know what my upcoming plans are. But I hope you've enjoyed seeing what I've been up to recently and seeing what I've finished. I hope you're having a wonderful May, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.